What is up, Colts Nation? Back again, another week closer to the NFL Draft, and I'll tell you, I am excited. I am nervous, oozing with anticipation on all of these things. Have you ever seen the movie Click with Adam Sandler? You know, the remote, all that stuff. I wish I had that blue remote right now. I would just be able to fast forward because this is, and listen, not fast forward my whole life, right? I'm enjoying the moment, but this 2 weeks leading up to the draft, can we agree, is going to be like the longest 2 weeks of my entire life. And with that, we have some reports, especially now, coming out that the Titans are interested in trading up to that number 3 pick. What are we going to make of that? What do we make of that? Or not just the Titans, anyone at that. Number one, is it true? I mean, is that something that's actually going on? The Titans are considering doing that? You know, in sports and in football, of course, I generally go by the rule that where there's smoke, there's fire. That being said, I do feel during draft season, it's kind of also smokescreen season. It's just the time of the year that you don't exactly know what's true and what isn't. Are the Tennessee Titans trying to get the Colts to react and give up a bunch of picks and compromise their future for a pick they didn't really have to trade up and get? Or are they really considering that? I mean, these are all things to consider all the time. We see teams and organizations leaking news, whether it's to shift public perception or to make another team act. I mean, this type of stuff happens. So I'm not saying that is what's going on, but I am a little bit skeptical. But for the sake of the episode, I mean, let's just assume it's true, right? Because, I mean, if it wasn't, we wouldn't really have much to talk about, right? There'd be no aftermath. But I want to assume it's true. And then I want to think about what does that mean for the Colts if not just the Titans were to trade up to that number 3 pick, but anyone were to trade up to that number 3 pick. I mean, after all, you assume that if someone's trading up for a pick, that means that another quarterback is off the board. And with that, how should the Colts act in the case that that does happen? But before we do, quickly, for those of you who haven't been here before, welcome to the show. You're listening to the Riding the Bench Colts cast. I'm your host, Justin Alfiero, recording from the bedroom studio. I know a lot of you who are here, I go through the spiel every week, but I assume there's new people coming in here every week. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, right? And I've been keeping up with this now on, I'd say, a weekly basis. I do wish the pace was a little bit higher, but I've been putting really a lot of effort, not to make an excuse, into the cover of a torn Achilles of mine. That does take up like an hour and a half of my time every day, which oftentimes would be my preparation times for these episodes. But regardless, if you're looking to see Colts content like forever, not just next week and the week after that, not just for the offseason, for the rest of your life, if you're looking for someone that's just here for the long haul, this is a spot for you. So you can go ahead and subscribe if you like. I'd be very grateful. If not, totally fine. Stick with it. I'm really making this for your entertainment, but if you are enjoying this video at any time during it, just shoot a like. That's like YouTube etiquette, right? If I'm watching something about cooking, which I love to do, I like videos and I save videos that I'm into, right? This is what helps YouTube know what you want to see on your feed. It's what's going to help me make a better product for you, the consumer. Is that a derogatory term? For you watching, you the Colts fan, right? So, and of course, at any point during this, I'm going to make sure that the video is timestamped. So if you want to skip to certain parts of this video, hopefully I've done a pretty good job of splitting this up into some sections, right? Some more digestible sections if you're trying to consume this in pieces, right? All right, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, first things first, let's touch on the Tennessee Titans. Now, on the surface, I'm going to be honest with you. The idea of us having a top 5 pick in this draft, when it was assumed, and not for anything, not assumed, we're bringing in quarterbacks. When in a year where we need a quarterback, having 2 division rivals in the Titans and the Texans picking ahead of us when they also are likely going to be drafting a quarterback in that spot, quite frankly, on the surface, sounds like a fireable offense, right? Especially not just when you give the fact that you're giving the opportunity to the Titans for them to trade up, but the fact that you could have traded up to the number 1 pick to avoid all of this entirely and just had first dibs at a quarterback. Instead, you get third dibs. And listen, I wasn't in favor of trading up for the number 1 pick in all fairness, but I don't mention that as a complaint. I'm not trying to complain. I never want to bring the negativity of a Colts fan. I always want to view it half full. For some of you out there, maybe that's not your cup of tea, but for those of you who it is, that's what I go for here for as much as possible. In fact, I bring this up for quite the opposite. I want to present why, in the case that this may happen, why it may not be as bad as what the general consensus will be. So I'm presenting what I think is going to be public perception. And I'm essentially saying, why is this not as bad as what meets the eye? Or how could it not be as bad as what meets the eye? Because again, as I just stated, I understand that the idea of the Titans trading up and the Texans being there, right? And what am I doing with my fingers here? These are the ingredients of a fireable offense, of an absolute disaster, and something we look at for the next 10 years and just regret tremendously. I understand that, but let me try to look at it half full. So, as far as the Texans go, the Texans can literally have a top 3 pick for the next decade, for the next 10 years. And I would never fear them. Them and their 3 fans nationwide ultimately are going to find a way to screw this thing up, right? Whoever they end up drafting with that number 2 pick at quarterback, if they do, is going to stink. We know this. It's the Texans. And if it's Stroud, who I'm high on, I guess I'll be wrong about Stroud. I guess I'm wrong. I'm willing to accept that as my reality on day one. I have no faith in whatever decision the Texans make, I think is wrong. So let's not worry about that. But now the Titans, on the other hand, them I do fear to some degree. And I suppose it's less about the current talent that they have and the organizational stability, which really hasn't been there. I mean, you have a GM that got fired in the middle of the season. And I'll tell you, I have never seen a GM get fired in one night like that. And it was from a player. I mean, A.J. Brown got this man fired. Usually when you have a higher up an executive, someone with a lot of money, losing their job in one night, it's usually about them doing something that maybe they shouldn't have been doing. I mean, we have Jeremy Irsay as our owner. We understand. You know what I'm talking about. I'll leave that there. So I'm not exactly thrilled at the idea of seeing them with a QB, more because of things like Vrabel and just the respect I have for the Titans. It's not a respect I have for the Texans. It's a respect I have for the Titans. Maybe there's a recency bias involved. But again, the idea of seeing them with a QB drafted right before us that, Lord forbid, is the guy we wanted, that does make me a little bit nervous. And then with that, you have to take into account that would mean that coming out of this draft, the quarterback situation that we are in consists of the Texans and who they drafted number 2, who was ahead of us, the Titans, who they drafted number 3, who was ahead of us, the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, and then us with Gardner Minshew, right? So this is not the most exciting thing on the surface. And again, trying to find the positives in it, that presumably means, as if it goes as I just said, the Panthers, the Texans, the Titans, that was 3 straight quarterbacks, right? And now we just sit here at number 4, absolutely primed, here's the positive, to take the best player potentially in the entire draft, and that is Will Anderson. And I'll tell you right now, if this ends up being what happens, I would pretty much just take Will Anderson in a heartbeat if he's at our pick. I'll be 100% honest with you. And I know some of you will probably say, well, if it's Bryce Young or Will Anderson, I'm taking Bryce Young. And you may be right, you may be wrong, and same to me. If I'm looking at Will Anderson and I'm the Colts, to be 100% honest with you, assuming your 2 favorite guys are gone, 2 of the 3, I'm taking Will Anderson, and I'm not even going to blink, right? But with Ballard, that's the question, because I'm not the GM as much as I'd like to be on occasion. I'm not. We have invested, and when I say we, I mean Christopher Ballard, has invested draft capital into guys like Kwity Paye and Dio Ndengbo, and we signed the kid from the 49ers, whose name I will eventually learn how to pronounce, but I think he might be a pretty sneaky signing. And maybe Ballard is just looking at what they have in place and saying that he wants to roll with what he's got and got. But for me, when you look at the pass rush in recent years, right? Has it been good? Sure. Solid. Has it left something to be desired? Absolutely. And it doesn't help when you let guys like Nico Autry and Justin Houston, right? And who am I forgetting? Yannick Ngakoue. There's someone else in there. When you let guys like that walk. But if you do that, you do figure that you're looking for that guy, that dude that is a constant game changer of a pass rusher, which, by the way, does not grow on trees, right? So rewind, we're looking at Will Anderson. If we're looking at, especially for you guys who don't like Levis, if we're looking at Levis or Will Anderson, who would you want us to take? You gotta take Will Anderson if he's there, right? That's just me, and I don't even hate Levis as much as the next guy. And here's the thing. What's the worst case scenario if you get Will Anderson? If Will Anderson is that guy that everybody says he is, obviously big pedigree, playing against some of the best teams in the country, and really does look the part. I mean, what a specimen he is. You get Will Anderson, and you fill that void and have a player that we haven't had in Indianapolis since, man, the Dwight Freeneys of the world, the Robert Mathises of the world, right? I mean, this would be a big deal for us. And then all of a sudden, you just look towards the second round, and then you're looking at guys like Hendon Hooker and Tanner McGee, who I both like. In fact, I pretty much like them better than call me blasphemous. I enjoy those players more than Anthony Richardson. I know, boom. That's where you turn off the podcast. I understand. It's fine. I'm spitting my thoughts. We're here, I'm talking, right? So you can let me know about it in the comments. But you get one of those two guys, whether it be in the second round or maybe you trade up into the mid to late first round. A lot of those teams don't need quarterbacks. You have some tradable assets and guys in Ryan Kelly and Kenny Moore, who I'll believe it when I see it when they're on the roster next year, both of them. You don't know if you could trade up there or whatever it is. You end up with one of those two quarterbacks. And then what? They stink? I mean, that is what it is, right? They stink, and then we have a high pick next year. And quite frankly, I like the quarterback class next year. Obviously, you have the kid at a USC. I'm drawing blanks on names right now. I'm freestyling. You have the kid out of North Carolina who really looks good. And I know a lot of people, who is it, Mitchell Trubisky played at North Carolina. If you have not watched the kid from North Carolina, whose name I will eventually be able to recall, I was watching, I'll tell you how I found him. I was watching Josh Downs, because I'm not a college football junkie or anything like that, but I do watch the film. I've been doing now for, particularly offensively, really just for my team's needs and for fantasy football purposes. I've been doing that for probably close to 10 years, and I was looking at Josh Downs, who I like, and the kid that was throwing him the football, I'm like, who is that? I remember the last time I was in that situation, completely off track. I apologize. No, I'm getting back to the Colts. Completely off track. Last time this happened to me, I was watching D.D. Westbrook film, and I ended up discovering Baker Mayfield before he ended up being the number one pick. I loved him, and you know it's gone how it's gone. So take my quarterback opinions with a grain of salt. But point being, back to what I'm talking about is what the fuck am I talking about? Who knows what I'm talking about? Point being, right, that's where I'm talking about, is that the QBs next year, I like, right? So if we stink this year, we have to get one next year. I mean, are we in for a rebuild or not? You know, we can't just be reactionary about everything. And I'm not saying that picking a quarterback is reactionary. All I'm saying is that it's not the only option with the number 4 pick. I think Will Anderson is very viable. I think if there's another team willing to give up a haul for a quarterback and whatever guys that you were really, really into were already gone, maybe you could trade back because you'd end up with a first-round pick this year and likely a first-round pick next year. And there are a couple teams this year that have 2 first-rounders, the Eagles being one of them. So I don't really know the practicality of it. I think maybe the Steelers are another one, the Seahawks. I don't know. Point being is you could end up with a 2-for-1 on the first-round pick, similar to the year of Quentin Nelson, even though obviously we had probably planned on drafting him at the number 3 slot anyway. That's kind of where we were at. You could trade back and get some more draft capital, and then again, still be drafting a quarterback either later in the first round, in the top of the second, or with your first rounder next year, right? I mean, the flexibility is there. So, point being is that let's hold our judgment, right, on whether or not to get super, super upset about the Texans and the Titans both drafting before us. Because you look at the 2018 draft, as I just mentioned, you ended up with Baker Mayfield at number 1, Sam Darnold at number 3, and it wasn't until pick number 7 that Josh Allen got drafted. And the same thing, Justin Herbert, 3rd quarterback taken off the board. I know technically in theory we're the 4th quarterback off the board, but it's not about that number. It's about the point that we don't really know, right? Experts are wrong every year. We don't exactly know who the best quarterback is in this draft. there's not like some universal consensus there. A lot of people say Bryce Young, but it's not like when it was Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow or Andrew Luck, these types of guys. That's not there this year. So if we end up drafting a Will Anderson at the 4th pick or trading back at this point, listen, I'm all right with it. Are you? That's what I want to know. So with that, I think that's about the entire episode. Those were all my thoughts on that for now. Hopefully I get back in less than a week, but man, until I'm walking around well and I don't have to just, constantly spend an hour and a half of my time every day just walking around and stretching this thing out, I could promise every single week I'll have an episode. So if you enjoyed that and you're still here, this would be the time to subscribe, shoot a like, and if not, that's totally fine. I do hope you enjoyed. And, for those of you who have subscribed, have liked, you're looking for another way to help the show, you could share this with one person. If you have another Colts friend, by the way, I don't. That's why I'm here talking to you through a camera. This is kind of my Colts fix. But if you have another friend that likes the Colts as much as you and I do, then if you share this with them, that would be a tremendous favor. But you just being here and watching and making it to the end is something that I'm very grateful for either way. So with that, I'm Justin Alfiero. You just listened to the Ride on the Bench Colts Cast, and I'll see you next time.